Good afternoon, my name is Joe Cashwell with Rotorcraft Pro Solutions. This is our Gen 3 X16 Pro line. This is the most incredible piece of equipment we've ever designed and built for charging LiPos. So if you're in a warehouse situation and you need to charge LiPos and you unfortunately have a thermal runaway, the smoke, if you've got roll-up doors open and you've got ventilation out there, the smoke is not a catastrophe. It's not preferred, but it's not a catastrophe. So if you're charging in an air-conditioned situation that's occupied and you have thermal runaway and it's releasing a lot of smoke, it's going to be an issue. So what this rack does is it actually shuts off the entire charging system. Main contactor opens and shuts the entire rack off. So the Gen 3 design has an evacuation system built into it. You'll run a plenum outside your building, and then there'll be a fan, which would be a booster fan, on the outside of the building. Inside this rack, there is 3 fans, one in each drawer. What the fans do is it moves air across your LiPos, plus already has the air in movement. If you have a thermal runaway and the rack goes into trouble mode, the air is already moving out. Then the booster fan comes on, and then you got 1,000 CFM rush of air taking anything out of the rack and expelling it outside of your building. So the Gen 3 has multiple ways that it'll go into trouble mode. The first one is just a little IR flame sensor. So if you have a pack or you have a short on a wire and a little flame comes open, we're gonna see that with the IR sensor. Now, if you do have thermal runaway on the pack and there's a lot of smoke coming out before the flame actually comes out, we have 2 temperature sensors in the back of the drawer. And of course, the air's already moving that way with the fan. So those 1 or 2 temperature sensors are gonna see that rise in the temperature, and it's gonna go into trouble mode. So the drawers that you put the batteries in when you're charging is CNC TIGGed aluminum with Cerakoting on it. All of that is made to contain any thermal runaways in each bay. So if a LiPo has an incident, it's going to be hitting a flame against the side of the wall. We want to stop it there. So we have an air gap situation with it's basically an insulator barrier in between the 2 bays. We want to let the LiPo burn out, and then we want to save everything else that's in there. We don't want it to daisy chain from bay to bay. So we're going to go ahead and power up the rack. This client wanted the evacuation system to actually have a UPS backup. So we put in some trip light 1500 rack mount trip lights in the rack. So if for some reason you crazily have a thermal runaway and then the building loses power, your evacuation fans are still going to run. So the UPS in here runs the contactors and then also runs the exterior fan, and we get about 45 minutes out of the exterior fan that they have. So the incident should be over with. So inside the drawer, we have fully customizable setups for our clients. This drawer has the Molex connector and AS150U. We can do XT60s, XT90s, AS150Us, and if we need to have PCBs made to make a connector for something that you need, we can do that also. We have 12 position, actually 13 position 12S JSTXH connectors. Most people go with the Molex. So the AS150U, when you plug it into the drawer, all your connections from your battery are being made on the pigtail. A lot of people don't understand you have a cycle count on your connectors, which is, we always say 1,000. Most of them are under 1,000, but you're not going to see issues till after 1,000 cycle counts, which means that every time you plug your battery in and unplug it, there's your cycle count. At 1,000 cycles, you throw this pigtail away, you plug in the next one, the rack has seen 1 cycle. All the cycles are on the pigtail. Same thing with the balance. 1,000 cycles, you're going to be servicing your rack, or 1,000 cycles you throw away this pigtail and you put a new one in. Now your battery connectors never go bad because you don't get 1,000 cycles out of your batteries. So your battery connectors will never go bad. It's the rack you want to protect. So to do a cold start on the rack, now this one our client wanted the UPS. We would do a long press and hold on the UPS and turn it on. Already done. So then we come over to the evacuation fan trigger and we turn that on. Now you instantly hear the fans inside the drawers come on, and all we're trying to do is keep the air moving from the front of the drawer to the back. If there's an incident, we've already got the air moving. It's not starting from a standstill. The second reason is we want to keep your batteries cool while you're charging. Nobody wants to charge a hot battery. So with the EVT on, you're going to reset the stop button and hit the power. Rack is now alive. So this rack has 16 independent channels. You have 2 channels per screen. You can control each channel, and you have 4 blades. If you're starting a charge, you just basically hit start, go to the amperage you want, hit the button, it starts its charge, and it'll monitor it as it's charging. You can also hit the system button and you can get live feedback of your internal resistance of your pack, all the way up to 12 cells. So if you have a technical person or an engineer or a safety officer and they want you to log the IRs, it's very easy. The other thing, these engines in this rack discharge. They will discharge to 20% or 50%. So you can go to storage and be able to travel with them. Some international customers have to be, I think it's 30% now. We actually had a client coming out of Asia doing a documentary, and they actually had to put their packs to 20% to fly with them. The more issues there are with LiPos, the more the laws are going to change. But this will put them all the way down to the voltage that you set. So if you want to go to 3.2 from 4.2, you can do it. These also do high voltage packs also, so you can go all the way up to 4.35. Fully customizable. This rack does 20 amps per channel. We can go all the way up to 45 amps per channel. So this rack runs off of 60 amps AC 220. We can just go to whatever we need to. 300 or 3200 watt power supply will make these chargers sing. So the versatility of this rack is limitless. Whatever you can come up with, this rack is going to do. If you need to charge a little bitty receiver pack, you can do it. If you need to charge a hard case pack for a drone, something big, something we're not even allowed to talk about, this rack will do it, from 2S to 12S. So to do a charge cycle, you'll set your pack in the rack. You'll take your Molex connector, plug it in. Rotate the battery. And then you can plug in your main charge connector. Load 4 batteries, start 4 channels. So with this client requesting the UPS be built into it, which means that if there is an event going on and power for some reason goes out in a building, the exhaust fan still works. Our rack controls the 110 voltage that goes to that exterior fan. And with the rack controlling that, if there is an incident, the rack turns that fan on automatically. So with the UPS being in the rack, from a cold start, you do a long press on the power, UPS powers up. Once the UPS is powered up and stable, you come over to the EFT, which is the evacuation fan trigger, and you turn it on. You hear the fans in the drawers come on and start moving the air. Two reasons why we have fans in the drawers. Reason one, everybody knows you don't want to charge a hot LiPo and you don't want your LiPos to get hot while you're charging them. So we're just moving a little bit of air over the LiPos with the fans to keep those cool, keep the LiPos cool. The second one is if there is an event and the rack goes into shutdown, the fans stay on, and all it does is it has air moving across those batteries. Of course, you've got one that's having a thermal runaway, and what that does is that when the outside fan triggers, the air is already moving, so we're not moving stagnant air from a dead standstill. It's already moving, and then once that 1000 CFM fan comes on, it's whooshing. Now that you have the red ring on the switch and you hear the fans running, you know the rack is armed. So you have a main contactor that runs the entire rack, and then you have 2-pole 220 breakers, one going to each power supply that's in the rack, one per blade, and then you have timed latching relays. And then you have the breaker for the EFT, which that is what runs the UPS, which runs everything else in the rack. If you turn that off, then what you're gonna do is you're gonna lose the UPS, and it's gonna go into trouble mode, and it'll start singing to you. So this is a standalone breaker just for the UPS and the internal fans. Now you did hear that the fans in the drawers kept running. The reason why is because they're powered off the UPS. So if you go into trouble mode, what it does is it turns on these timed relays. One time relay shuts the entire rack off and will not let you restart it. The second one activates the exterior fan. So we have a twist lock box in the back of the rack that the electrician or your facilities people will just plug it in and twist it. If you ever need to service rack, you can unplug it and roll it out. And to reset the system, it's basically as easy as turn the trigger switch off, turn it back on, and the rack is ready to go again. To start the rack, simple as pushing the power button, all the channels come up. Stopping the rack, simple as a press. Now the stop button does lock out, so if somebody's over here pushing and it doesn't come on, simple as twisting it and resetting the stop button. Once again, when the rack is on, three things put the rack in trouble mode. The first one is the IR sensor in the front of the drawer, and what it's doing is it's looking at that battery as you're charging. If an open flame comes up, not a blowtorch, but if just an open flame comes up, it's going to shut the rack off. The second one is the thermal sensors in the back of the drawer. Of course, we're moving air from the front to the back. We can't put an IR sensor in the back because if it's full of smoke and we're pulling that smoke past the sensor, it's not going to see a flame. So we put temperature sensors, one on either side of the back of the bay. And so if that sees a rise in temperature, it goes into trouble mode. Now, if you have a LiPo that is at very low voltage, somebody bumped it, it got dropped, or is just going into thermal runaway mode, if it's putting out a lot of smoke but not firing heat, the operator, which is supposed to be attending the racks as you're charging, could just as simple as push the manual venting. So we have one on either side. We don't want somebody to have to reach across the front if a drawer is open, so they would have to go around it. So we put the manual venting trigger one on either side. So if the drawer is out here, they're not trying to get around it or reaching across the drawer that could possibly have a thermal runaway happening. So ordering your rack is easy as calling me up. We talk about what your needs are, what your connectors are. I'll let you know what your facilities need to install for power requirements. This rack takes 60 amps. We've done racks that do 120 amps, and I think the biggest one we can do is like 160 amps AC power. So we would need to work with your facilities people so they could have everything installed when the rack shows up. Anything over 60 amps has to be direct wired. So it would be a hard wire coming into the rack. If it's 60 amps or below, we use a Leviton 4-prong plug, and you can plug it right in with that. So if you notice the yellow handles on the drawers, we have locking 500-pound rated slides. So these should last the lifetime of any of us. So to open a drawer, you push down on this, and that unlocks the drawer. Now I already cheated and I have the other one done so I don't have to stand in front of the camera. But when it comes out, it locks open. We don't want the drawer running away from a client while they're trying to install this and plug this in. If the drawer runs away from you and that lid falls, you could damage a cable, balance cables, the operator. We don't want any of that to happen. So we chose right off the bat to do locking slides that the drawer locks open and the drawer locks shut. And it's just as easy as a twist latch right here and open it up. And there's your 4 bays. Well, I hope you found the information in this video useful. Give us a call. I'll talk to you about what we can do. See if we can't help you out with a charging system. Rotorcraft Pro Solutions, keeping you in charge.